He took in a silent servant, unaware she was the legendary ghost wolf who once saved his life. The kingdom of Aldereth had not known true peace for many years. The mountains stood tall and cold around it, like silent watchers. The forests were deep and old, filled with mist even during summer mornings. And at night, when the wind moved through the trees, people said they could hear distant howls. Some said it was only wolves. Others whispered it was her, the ghost wolf. Long ago, she had been more than a story. Soldiers spoke of a silver shape moving across battlefields like moonlight. They said she was neither beast nor woman, but something in between. Her eyes were gold like burning stars. Her fur shone like frost under the moon. She protected the royal bloodline. She protected the throne. Then, one winter, she vanished. And on that same winter night, young Prince Kaelin should have died. He was only 10 years old when the northern armies attacked. The palace burned. The sky was red with fire. The guards fell one by one. His father fought until he could not stand. Kaelin remembered running. He remembered fear. He remembered the sound of heavy steps behind him in the snow. And then a flash of silver, a roar that shook the air. Golden eyes in the darkness. Something stood between him and death that night. When he woke the next morning, the attackers were gone. The snow was covered in strange tracks. Large, powerful, not human. The ghost wolf had not been seen again, but Kaelin survived. Years passed. The boy grew into a king. King Kaelin of Aldereth was not like his father. He did not shout. He did not laugh loudly in the halls. He ruled with calm words and careful thought. He trusted few people. He kept his heart behind stone walls. The court respected him. The people feared him a little. No one truly knew him. At night, when the palace was quiet, he sometimes stood alone on the highest balcony. He looked toward the forest beyond the mountains. Sometimes he felt watched, not in danger. But remembered, one evening during heavy rain, the palace gates opened for a stranger. She arrived in a simple gray cloak. Her clothes were wet from travel. Mud covered the hem of her dress. She carried nothing but a small cloth bundle. The guards stopped her. She did not speak. When they asked her name, she lowered her head. When they asked where she came from, she stayed silent. But there was something strange about her. The horses near the gate grew calm when she stepped closer. The wind slowed. Even the rain seemed softer around her. The captain of the guard did not understand why, but he felt no threat from her. She asks for work, one guard later reported to the king. She says nothing, but she bows when we speak of service. Kaelin almost refused without thought. The palace did not need more servants, but something made him pause. "Bring her," he said. She entered the great hall quietly. Her steps made no sound against the stone floor. Her head remained lowered, silver strands of hair falling across her face. She looked young, perhaps in her early 20s. Her hands were steady, her posture straight, but there was something about her presence that felt older than her appearance. Kaelin watched from his throne. "Lift your head," he said calmly. Her eyes were pale gray, not weak, not frightened, just wild, like winter sky before snowfall. He studied her for a long moment. She did not tremble under his gaze. "You cannot speak?" he asked. She gently shook her head. He did not know why disappointment touched him. It was small, almost nothing, but it was there. "You may work in the palace," he decided. "You will serve in the Western Wing." As she turned to leave, a strange feeling passed through him, a warmth, a flicker of memory. For a heartbeat, he saw snow, golden eyes. Then it was gone. The silent servant quickly became known throughout the palace. She worked without complaint. She woke before sunrise. She moved through halls like a shadow. No one ever heard her coming. Other servants tried to speak with her, but she only smiled softly and nodded. She never seemed lonely, yet she never seemed fully present either. And animals followed her. Birds rested near her windows. Palace dogs lay at her feet. Once a wild wolf was seen sitting calmly outside the palace gates at dawn, watching the tower where she worked. Whispers began again in the city. "The ghost wolf walks," some said, but no one believed it truly. The ghost wolf was legend. This girl was only a servant. One night, weeks later, the king could not sleep. Storm clouds covered the sky. Lightning flashed beyond the mountains. The air felt heavy, restless. Kaelin walked alone through the corridors. As he turned a corner near the western wing, he saw her standing at a window. She was looking toward the forest. Not like someone watching trees, like someone listening. The moonlight touched her hair, and for a brief moment, it looked silver. He stepped closer. "You should be resting," he said, quietly. When she finally faced him, her eyes held something deep, something that made his chest tighten. "You feel it too?" he said without thinking. Her gaze sharpened slightly. "The forest," he continued. "Something is changing." She held his eyes for a long second. Then she nodded once. Thunder rolled across the sky, and for a strange moment, it felt as though they were not king and servant. It felt as though they stood on equal ground. The thought unsettled him. He stepped back. "Return to your duties," he said, his voice colder now. She bowed and left, but long after she disappeared down the corridor, he felt the echo of her presence beside him. The attack came 3 nights later. It was silent at first, a shadow moving across rooftops. A figure slipping through a balcony door. The assassin wore black and moved like smoke. Kaelin was alone in his chambers. He sensed danger too late. The blade flashed in the dim light, but before it reached him, a force struck the attacker from the side. The window shattered. Wind exploded into the room. The silent servant stood between the assassin and the king. But she did not move like a servant. She moved like something wild, fast. Her cloak tore as she turned, and for one impossible second, her eyes burned gold. Not gray, gold. The assassin froze in shock. The air in the room changed. It felt colder, sharper. Then it was over. Guards rushed in. The attacker was captured, and the servant stood still, breathing calmly as though nothing unusual had happened. Kaelin stared at her. "You moved before I even saw him," he said slowly.
She said nothing.
But she did not look away. There was no fear in her eyes, only recognition. His heart began to pound.
"I have seen those eyes before," he whispered. Her fingers tightened slightly at her sides.
Snow, fire, golden light, in darkness. The memory struck him like lightning. "You!" he breathed. She stepped back just once, as if distance mattered. The guards were speaking loudly now, asking questions, checking the king for injuries. But Kaelin heard none of it. He only saw her, only remembered that winter night. "You were there," he said, louder now. She turned. The torches flickered wildly. For a single heartbeat, the shadow behind her was not human. It was large. It had ears pointed toward the ceiling. It had a tail made of smoke and silver light. Then the torches steadied. The shadow was normal again. She lowered her head. But her eyes were still glowing faintly gold. And in that moment, King Kalen understood something impossible. The legend had not vanished. The ghost wolf had been in his palace, serving him, watching him.
All this time.
Before he could speak again, a deep howl echoed from the forest beyond the palace walls. Not one wolf. Many, answering something, or calling her home. She lifted her head, slowly, at the sound, and for the first time since arriving, fear touched her expression. Not fear for herself, fear of what was coming. The palace trembled faintly. Far beyond the mountains, dark clouds gathered unnaturally fast. The ancient curse that once bound the ghost wolf to the royal bloodline was stirring. And this time, it was not coming to protect the king. It was coming to claim what it believed still belonged to it. Kalen stepped toward her. "Tell me the truth," he demanded softly. She opened her mouth, but no sound came, only silence, and golden light growing brighter in her eyes. The forest outside Valdereth whispered secrets that no human should hear. After the night of the assassin, King Kalen could not sleep. He kept thinking about her. The silent servant, the girl whose eyes glowed gold like the fire of the battlefield he barely remembered. His heart beat faster when he recalled the flash of silver fur, the way she moved before the attacker could strike. Yet he also remembered the way she lowered her head, calm and silent, as though nothing had happened. That calmness confused him, frustrated him, and stirred something unfamiliar deep within him. In the days that followed, Kalen tried to speak to her. He asked about her past, her family, anything at all. She did not answer, only nodded, kept her head low, and moved as though he were not there. But when she passed through the halls, he sometimes glimpsed a flicker in her eyes, a spark of recognition, or perhaps memory. He could not tell. One morning, the king called her to the tower library. He had spent the night reading old chronicles of the kingdom, dusty volumes bound in leather, some written before even his father's time. His fingers trembled when he traced a name: the Ghost Wolf. The story spoke of a warrior who could walk as both wolf and woman, bound by magic to protect the royal bloodline. They spoke of battles where she saved kings and princes alike. They spoke of a curse that forced her loyalty, chained by magic to the throne she had never chosen. But the chronicles ended with her disappearance. Kalen stared at the young servant now standing silently before him. Her gray eyes avoided his, but her shoulders were straight, her presence commanding in a quiet, strange way. "You are the ghost wolf, aren't you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She froze. He waited, but she did not speak. "Answer me," he said, louder but still calm. "Do you remember that night?" Her hands clenched slightly at her sides. For the first time, he saw the smallest tremor in her composure.
"Yes," he said finally. Her voice was soft, like wind through dry leaves, but it shook the air around them.
The revelation did not frighten him. It angered him. "How could you disappear? How could you leave me to face them alone?" he demanded, his voice a mix of hurt and disbelief. Her eyes flickered gold for a heartbeat, just enough to remind him of what he had seen in the assassin's attack. Then they returned to gray.
"I did not leave," she said quietly. "I was
Taken, bound, cursed. I could not stay." Kalen felt the weight of her words settle over him like a storm. The memory of the massacre, the terror, the flash of silver light, the roar in the snow. It all made sense now. She had protected him, yes, but she had also suffered for it, and he had been too young to know, too powerless to save her. "I should have known," he said almost to himself. "I should have remembered." That night, shadows moved along the walls of the palace. Not ordinary shadows, dark, twisting, alive. The kingdom had known peace for years, but something had awakened in the north. Dark sorcery, the remnants of an enemy that had long been thought defeated. Whispers among the scholars spoke of a curse that could return, centuries old, tied to the royal bloodline, and it was seeking the ghost wolf. She sensed it first. In the garden beneath the silvered moonlight, her golden eyes flashed as she stopped mid-step. Something in the air shifted. The wind carried a scent of smoke and iron. Something was coming. Kaelin noticed her sudden stillness. "What is it?" he asked. Her eyes met his for a brief second, gold glimmering again. "They are coming," she said. "For me and for you." The words made his blood run cold. The next night, the attack came. It was not like the assassin before. This was different. The air itself seemed alive with darkness. Figures moved through the shadows, their magic black and consuming. The palace gates were struck by blasts of force that cracked stone and splintered wood. Guards fell screaming, unable to reach the intruders. Kaelin drew his sword, but his training felt useless. These were not ordinary soldiers. These were sorcerers, and their power was ancient, unnatural. The servant moved beside him, and he realized she was no longer just a human beside him. Her movements were fluid, predatory, impossible. She did not draw a sword. She was the weapon. In a flash, she intercepted a strike aimed at Kaelin. The sorcerer recoiled as if struck by a storm. Her cloak tore, her hair flew, but her golden eyes blazed, terrifying and brilliant. The wind whipped through the halls, carrying the sound of a low, resonant howl. It was the howl of a wolf, deep and commanding. But it was her, a ghost of the wolf he had once seen in the snow. Kaelin's heart pounded. He had never seen her like this before. She was no servant. She was legend come to life. After the attack, the palace was silent. Broken windows, scorched walls, and the scent of smoke lingered. The attackers were gone, but the warning was clear. They would return, and they were not coming for the king. They were coming for her. That night, Kaelin confronted her once more. They were alone in the library, the only light from the fire flickering against their faces. "Why did no one ever tell me?" he asked, voice low and raw. "Why did the chronicles end with your disappearance? Why did no one warn me that the one who saved me could still be here?" She looked at him, gray eyes softening, because no one could. "The truth is dangerous. My power, my presence, it brings both protection and destruction. I stay to protect you, but if they find me, they will destroy everything you care for." Kaelin felt a strange mixture of awe and fear. He had ruled with logic, with strategy, with duty. But none of that prepared him for the reality of standing beside someone who could shatter kingdoms without effort. "Then I will not let them take you," he said, quietly but firmly. "If they want you, they will have to face me first." Her lips trembled, not from fear, but from something else. Something like hope. Kaelin tried to understand her world, the world she had come from. He asked questions about the battles, the curse, the magic. She told him little, often shaking her head, but he could read the pain behind her silence. She had lived centuries in shadow, bound to kings she could not love freely, fighting battles that were not hers to fight. And yet, she had saved him. Twice now. He could not stop thinking about her, about the way she moved, how her eyes glimmered, how she seemed to know things before he spoke them. He was drawn to her in ways he did not fully understand. And she, though careful, reserved, and silent, watched him with a strange intensity. When he spoke of his plans for the kingdom, she would listen as if every word mattered. When danger appeared in the city, she would move closer, her eyes glinting gold just enough to remind him she was always near. Their connection was unspoken, tense, and fragile, but undeniable. One evening, lightning split the sky above the mountains. Thunder shook the palace walls. The servant stood by the balcony, looking toward the forest. Kaelin stepped beside her. "They are still coming," he said. She nodded once. "Soon? Very soon. Then we must prepare," he said. "But, tell me, will you fight for me?" "Will you?" Her eyes met his. Gold flared, sharp and brilliant, cutting through the storm. She shook her head slightly. "I fight for what is mine," she said softly. "Not for you, but I will not let them harm you." The word struck him like lightning itself. He felt warmth in his chest, fear for her, and something deeper, something he could not name. And then, as if to remind him of the danger that stalked them, the howl came again. Not one wolf, many. A chorus from the forest, echoing like a warning across the mountains. She stiffened. Her hand hovered near the balcony railing. Her eyes shone with a strange light, gold and pure, like fire and ice combined. "They are gathering," she whispered. Before Kaelin could speak, the storm outside intensified. The wind carried voices, whispers of ancient magic, voices that promised destruction if she returned. Her form shifted slightly, her shoulders tensing, and for one brief, terrifying moment, she looked not human at all. Silver light shimmered around her, and her eyes burned brighter than the moon. Kaelin realized then that she was more than legend. She was the curse itself, and the only thing powerful enough to stop it. But the truth terrified him. If she fought fully, the kingdom could be destroyed in the process, and if she did not fight, they would all die. Lightning split the sky. Wolves howled in the distance, and the silent servant looked at him with eyes that carried centuries of sorrow, power, and a love she could never fully speak. The night was alive with shadows and storm. Lightning lit the sky above Valdereth, flashing across the mountains and spilling into the palace halls. The wind roared through the broken gates, carrying whispers of dark power. King Kaelin stood at the balcony, gripping the railing with white-knuckled hands. The silent servant was beside him, her silver hair whipping in the wind, her eyes glowing gold. The storm seemed to bend around her, as though the very air knew her power.
"They are close," she whispered, her voice soft yet commanding.
"I can feel it in the wind. They know I am here. They will not wait." Kaelin swallowed hard. "Then we fight, but together," he said firmly. "I will not let them harm you." Her eyes softened for a brief moment, but she shook her head. "I do not fight for anyone but myself. But I will not let you die." There was a strange honesty in her words, a mix of pride, sorrow, and something else, something he could not name but felt in the pit of his chest. The attackers came like shadows rising from the forest. They were not men. They were sorcerers of ancient power, their bodies cloaked in darkness, their eyes glowing red under hoods. Magic crackled around them like black fire. Kaelin raised his sword, his training, his strategy, all his years as king. They were nothing against this. But the silent servant did not draw a weapon. She did not need one. With a single leap, she moved like wind through the palace, silver light trailing behind her. The first attacker reached for her, but she vanished before he could touch her, appearing behind him in a flash. The gold of her eyes burned, and a wave of force threw him across the hall. Kaelin followed her into the chaos. His guards fell around him, unable to withstand the magic, but he pressed on, sword in hand. He had never felt fear like this. Not before an army, not before a battlefield, but now, with the woman who had saved his life standing beside him, he felt something more complicated. Awe, terror, and a strange pull of something like hope.
As the battle raged, the truth began to reveal itself.
The silent servant, no, the ghost wolf, was not just a guardian. She was royalty in her own right. She had been a queen long before the first king of Valdereth claimed the throne. Cursed for loving a mortal king, She had been transformed into the ghost wolf, bound to serve the bloodline forever. Every generation, she had protected the kingdom. Every generation, she had been forgotten. Kaelin realized this as he fought alongside her. The golden glow in her eyes was not just power, it was sorrow. Centuries of pain. Centuries of loyalty forced upon her. And now here she was, standing for him, protecting him. Again. His chest tightened. He wanted to say something. But words were useless. Action spoke louder in the heat of battle. The sorcerers advanced. Dark magic struck the palace walls, shattering stone and torchlight. Kaelin fought with all his strength, but he was only human. The ghost wolf moved like a force of nature, her body twisting in impossible ways, her silver hair streaming like wind, her eyes blazing gold. Every attacker that came near her was thrown back or struck down before they could act. And yet, her movements were careful. She did not destroy everything. She did not kill without thought. She fought to protect, to defend, not to dominate. Kaelin watched her, heart hammering. He saw not only the legend, but the woman beneath it, the centuries of chains, the silent suffering, the loyalty that had been forced upon her. He wanted to reach out, to tell her she did not have to bear it alone, but the battle allowed no words. At last, the sorcerers stopped advancing. They circled the throne room like wolves around a herd. The air trembled with dark magic. The ghost wolf turned to Kaelin, her golden eyes meeting his. "You must step back," she warned. "If I release my full power, the palace will not survive. Only I will remain." Kaelin shook his head. "I will not leave you. Not now. Not ever." Her lips trembled. Something unspoken passed between them. It was a mixture of warning, sorrow, and longing. "You must trust me," she said softly. "I cannot fight as a servant." "I cannot fight as a ghost. I must fight as what I truly am. And when I do, only one of us may survive." Kaelin's chest tightened. He did not fully understand her words, but he felt the weight of them in his bones. He wanted to argue, to tell her he would face whatever came with her, but he knew, deep down, that she had been carrying centuries of burden alone. And now, the moment had come to break it. She stepped into the center of the room. The ground beneath her seemed to glow faintly, silver light spilling from her feet. She lifted her head, and for a moment she was not human at all. Her body grew larger, her hair like flowing silver flames, her eyes burning gold like twin suns. Her form shimmered between wolf and woman, powerful and terrifying. Kaelin could only stare, unable to speak. He realized then that this was the ghost wolf in her true form, the guardian of the bloodline, the queen, the curse itself. "Do not hold back," he whispered. "Do what you must." For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. He saw everything. Her pain, her sorrow, her power, and a strange, fragile trust. Then she let go. The storm inside the palace exploded. Silver light shot from her body, sweeping the sorcerers off their feet. Dark magic collided with her power, sparks and smoke filling the room. The walls trembled, torches fell. The throne shook. The attackers screamed, but their voices were swallowed by the roar of her power. She moved like a living storm, fast, precise, unstoppable. Kaelin watched, awestruck and terrified. Every strike she made carried centuries of anger, sorrow, and loyalty. But she did not harm him. Not once, not even when the light and darkness collided around him. In that moment, he understood. She could have killed him. She could have left him to fall, just as her life had been stolen by the curse, but she had chosen to protect him again. He wanted to speak, to reach out, but he could not move. When the last of the attackers fell, silence returned. The palace was battered, scorched, broken. Smoke drifted in the halls. The air smelled of fire and magic. The ghost wolf stood in the center, chest heaving, her silver light dimming slightly. She looked at Kaelin, exhaustion and sorrow written across her features. "You have saved me," she said softly. "But the curse. But it still holds me." Kaelin stepped forward. "Then we break it. Together. Tell me what I must do." Her eyes glimmered gold. "The curse demands a sacrifice," she said. "Either you surrender your throne, or I surrender my freedom." Hyalan froze. He realized what she meant. To end the curse, someone had to give up everything. Power, immortality, identity. One of them would be free. The other would bear the chains forever. The thought was unbearable, but he could not let her carry the burden alone. "I will give it," he said firmly. "I will give my crown, my throne, my claim to the kingdom."
Take your freedom. She shook her head.
"No. I cannot let you do that. You are already bound by duty, by loyalty." "I will bear it. It is mine." They stared at each other, tension between them sharp enough to cut steel, neither willing to surrender. Neither willing to let the other suffer. The storm outside grew stronger. Lightning flashed across the broken windows, illuminating the two of them in a silver glow. Her golden eyes met his.
"There is only one way to break it," she said. "One of us must let go completely.
One of us must surrender the bond forever. If not, the curse will return, stronger than before." Kaelin's hands trembled. "Then we choose," he said softly, "no matter the cost." For the first time, the ghost wolf seemed uncertain. She looked at him, something unspoken passing between them. Regret, sorrow, and something deeper, something like love. The air shifted again. The palace trembled, and from the shadows of the ruined gates, a new threat appeared. Something older, darker, a magic older than the kingdom itself. It was coming for her, and Kaelin knew in his heart that the choice they made tonight would change everything. Forever. The palace trembled as the darkness surged. Kaelin's heart raced. The ghost wolf stood before him, silver light spilling from her body like moonlight over a stormy sea. Her golden eyes burned with power, sorrow, and determination. "They are coming for me," she whispered. "I can feel them. Beyond the forest, beyond the mountains."
"And if I fall, everything will fall with me."
Kaelin gripped the railing of the balcony, fighting to keep his fear in check. "Then we end this," he said. "Together, whatever it takes." For a brief moment, her eyes softened.
Something human, something vulnerable flickered there. But then she straightened, her shoulders lifting as if carrying centuries of burden all at once. "I cannot fight as a servant," she said. "I must fight as what I truly am."
"And once I do, the curse will demand a choice." He had learned to trust her instincts. He had learned to respect her power. He had learned, in these few days, that she had been protecting him, not just from enemies, but from the weight of his own fear. The storm outside was no longer simple wind and rain. It was alive, twisting and writhing, carrying whispers of an ancient sorcery. The dark magic that had haunted the northern lands for centuries now converged on Valderoth. Its energy pulsed, reaching into the palace walls, shaking the foundations, and stirring the shadows. The ghost wolf moved forward. Her feet barely touched the stone floor. Silver light streamed from her, bending around the darkness like water around a rock. The attackers, sorcerers who had returned from forgotten realms, appeared in waves, faces hidden, magic sparking from their hands. Kaelin drew his sword and followed her, but he quickly realized he was only human. Against their power, his steel was fragile. He could fight, yes, but he could not match her, and she did not ask him to. She was the storm. He was the calm in its center. The battle began. Her movements were fluid and impossible, faster than the eye could follow. She struck with claws of silver light, her golden eyes blazing. Dark magic clashed against her, sparks exploding across the halls. The sorcerers screamed as they were thrown back, some disappearing into the shadows entirely. Yet she did not destroy everything. Every movement was precise, careful. She protected Kaelin. She protected the palace. She destroyed only those who threatened them. Kaelin watched her in awe. He had always known legends could not capture reality. But standing here, seeing the ghost wolf in her true form, he understood the truth. She was not just legend. She was power itself, tempered by centuries of loyalty and sorrow. And she had chosen him. After what felt like hours, the attackers fell back. Their magic could not withstand her light, and those who survived fled into the night. The palace was battered, broken, scorched in places. Smoke drifted through the halls. The air smelled of magic and fire. Kaelin stepped forward.
"It is over," he said. The ghost wolf shook her head slowly.
Her silver hair shimmered with exhaustion. Her golden eyes dimmed slightly, returning to gray.
"Not yet," she said. "The curse, Bah,
still holds me, and one of us must give everything to break it." He knew what she meant. The curse had bound her to the royal bloodline for centuries. To end it, someone had to surrender, either the crown and throne or her freedom and immortality. Kaelin took a deep breath. "Then I will give it," he said softly. "I will give my crown, my throne, anything. You must be free." Her eyes glimmered gold again, a mix of surprise, sorrow, and something else. Something tender. Almost human. "No," she whispered. "I will bear it."
"I have borne it for centuries. It is my burden."
"I cannot let you give up everything for me." He stepped closer. "I have lived with duty my whole life. I will do this."
I choose to break your chains, even if it means giving up everything I have. The ghost wolf hesitated.
For the first time, uncertainty flickered in her eyes. She had fought alone for centuries. She had borne pain, sorrow, and endless loyalty. And now, someone else was offering to carry the weight with her. They stood in silence, the storm outside fading slightly, the palace quiet except for their breathing. The moment stretched, and in that quiet, something passed between them. A bond deeper than words, deeper than time. "I am not used to this," she whispered. "To trust, to let someone share my burden."
"You do not have to,"
he said gently. "Not if you choose not to."
"But know this, I will never abandon you."
She looked at him, and for a heartbeat, the centuries of sorrow seemed to lift. She smiled softly, almost shyly, like a human being, not a legend. And then the choice had to be made. The ghost wolf lifted her head. Silver light flowed from her body, surrounding them both.
"If I fight fully," she said, "the curse will be broken."
"But the palace may fall. You may not survive." Kaelin reached out, taking her hands in his. "Then we face it together. Whatever happens, I will be with you." Her golden eyes met his, blazing with power and emotion. "Then trust me," she said, and with that, she let herself become the ghost wolf completely, her silver light stretching outward, her body growing larger, powerful beyond imagination, her roar shaking the mountains. The dark magic that had haunted Valdereth for centuries struck at her, but she met it head-on. Light against darkness, power against power. The palace trembled. The walls cracked, torches fell. But she did not falter. She was the storm. Kaelin stood at her side, feeling the weight of her power and the truth of her choice. She had chosen to fight for them all. To end the curse. To be free. When the light finally faded, the palace was quiet. The darkness had been driven away. The attackers were gone. The storm outside had calmed. Kaelin stepped forward slowly. His eyes searched for her. She stood there, breathing heavily, silver hair dimmed, golden eyes fading to gray. She was smaller now, human once more. The curse had ended. She was free. She looked at him, and for the first time, she smiled fully. Not as a servant, not as a legend, not as a ghost, but as herself. Kaelin's chest tightened.
You are free,
He whispered.
Yes, she said softly, but it feels strange to live without chains.
To make my own choices.
He smiled gently.
Then choose me if you wish.
Not as a servant, not as a guardian, not as legend, but as a woman standing before a man who will respect your freedom. Her eyes softened, gray now but glowing faintly with warmth. And if I choose? He stepped closer, taking her hands in his again. Then we faced the world together, free and equal. Tears shimmered in her eyes, silver catching the light. She nodded. Slowly, she leaned toward him. And in that quiet palace, under the first calm moonlight in years, they stood together. The centuries of sorrow lifted. The kingdom had survived, and a bond was formed not of duty, not of legend, but of trust, respect, and something deeper, something neither had fully understood until this moment. Weeks later, the kingdom began to heal. Valdorath rebuilt its walls and towers, and the people whispered of the storm that had been fought and won. But none knew the true story of the ghost wolf, who had chosen to stay, not as a legend, not as a servant, but as herself. She walked the halls freely now, no longer silent. She spoke to the people, taught the soldiers, and sometimes, just sometimes, smiled at the king in quiet moments. Kaelin had given up the crown temporarily, just as he had promised, but he was no less a king. He was changed, softer, wiser, tempered by the courage of the woman who had saved him again. And she had chosen to stay. Not because she had to, not because of duty, but because she wanted to. On clear nights, when the moon was high and silver light washed over the palace, they would stand together on the balcony. The wolves in the forest no longer howled in warning. They watched silently, calm and protective. Kaelin would sometimes brush a hand through her silver hair, and she would smile, gold and warmth in her eyes. No longer the ghost wolf bound by curse, but a woman free, a woman who had chosen love, trust, and life. And in that quiet peace, the kingdom felt whole again, not because of crowns or thrones, not because of power or magic, but because two hearts, burdened by history and pain, had found each other and had chosen to stay.